as I'll show you in a while. And the color Doppler will be the final confirmation. You see here, very high velocity behind the left atrium, and that's consistent with the confluent vein of the pulmonary venous return, and in this case there was also an obstruction, so it was really a neonatal emergency to be checked. Once you detected that the veins are not connecting with the posterior wall of the left atrium, you may wish to check where they are going. They are going upwards to the superior vena cava brachiocephalic veins, as in this case you see here the image, the fourth vessel, quite similar to the persistent left superior vena cava. The only difference being that in this case the blood goes up to the vein and it's not going down to the four-chamber view. If you compare the images, you see, and I tell you that these are taken from the same patient, you may say why this is so bad quality and this is high quality. Because you should consider that if you have some problems with overweight or BMI, like in this case, then you may think, if you are lucky and the fetus is not with the head down, to go transvaginally. In fact, these and these were taken transvaginally with 5 to 9 megahertz in a breech fetus at 21 weeks of gestation. So think about getting around the problem if you need more resolution. Another case showing you that indeed you may have some problems with finding the connection, because in this case the atrium was indeed smooth, but then at the end of the clip you see these two tags, minor tags, so you may be in doubt whether they're connecting or not. And if you use also the color Doppler, in this case you should reduce the balance to see if indeed the veins are entering the posterior wall of the left atrium. I'm sorry, because on the original version there was a Cine loop, but I checked this morning and it's not working anymore. Anyway, but on the final image, what happens is this one, that you go up and again you see here the confluence of the four veins behind the left atrium. And in that case it was also another surprise because we did not detect it before birth, because the couple did not want to do an invasive late in pregnancy. There was a Katai syndrome behind it, and we'll come to that when speaking about the prognostic factor. So the INSOM diagnosis on the four-chamber view, if you use just the grayscale and you rely on your grayscale examination, may be like this. Either you do not find any entrance of the pulmonary veins, you see a smooth wall of the left atrium, you may have an increased distance between the left atrium and the aorta, which has been described in this paper here, or the other option is that you do have a smooth wall, and on the top of that you have also this hollow structure behind. Okay? So now if you have this condition, just wait a few moments, because there will be a bolus of fluid in the esophagus, and if that's the case, this will disappear. If it remains there, then you may be, the baby is in trouble, because indeed is abnormal pulmonary venous return. The other four-chamber view which needs to be checked as far as the pulmonary venous returns are concerned is if you see dilation of the coronary sinus, because as for those of you who were in the course on Saturday, among the vessels that may drain into a coronary sinus in an abnormal way, you may also have very rarely the pulmonary veins. So these are the three aspects that you should check on your fetus. So in this case, if you have a smooth wall, what happens is that most of the cases you have an intracardiac form of total autonomic pulmonary venous return. So either directly, as in this case, to the right atrium, which is there, or in some other occasions, as you see here in the drawing, through the coronary sinus. If you, on the other side, see the hollow structure behind, then the hollow structure is the cross-section of the vertical vein. The vertical vein may go up or may go down. So the next step for your examination is to find where this vein is going. And you should demonstrate again that the confluence is behind the left atrium, but there is no connection whatsoever with the left atrium itself. And then you go up on the 3-vessel view and check whether there is this kind of aspect that you see here. So it's a vessel which is on the other side, on the left of the most of the instance, but not always, on the left of the pulmonary outflow tract. And sometimes you may have, if it's working, yes, high velocity across it. Some other times you do not see high velocity. I just reduced the TRF to show it, but that's the vertical vein in a superdeformative form of abnormal pulmonary venous return. On the other hand, if you do not find anything upwards, you should go below the diaphragm, get a longitudinal view of the abdomen, similar to what Julina showed you for the ductus venosus, but then try to find another vessel which is going down towards the transducer. That's the descending aorta, so that's correct. And that's another vessel which is behind the veins, which is going towards the abdomen, and that's not a normal vessel. So that's the vertical vein going, most of the cases, into the portal system. So these are the findings that you should try to demonstrate. We did, even though a meta-analysis, nothing I like. In fact, this is my first and probably last meta-analysis I did. But anyway, if you to take all the papers published on this topic, there are not so many of them because it's a rare anomaly, and as I'll show you, very few cases have been detected before birth. But the few hints that provide you some lead to what is behind your anomaly of the connection of the pulmonary veins. You may have increased distance between the left atrium and the descending aorta, recognition of what I showed you, the venous confluence behind the left atrium, ventricular disproportion, which unlike what we thought is not gestational age dependent, at least in the taking into account all the publications that were published so far, and check for the presence of the 4th vessels at the level of the vessel view, and vertical vein, of course. If you use color pulmonary Doppler, check for the velocity, because if there is some aliasing in a venous vessel, there is an acceleration of blood, and if there is obstruction, that's a bad prognostic sign because it becomes a real neonatal emergency. As far as prognosis is concerned, you may have association as for all other congenital heart disease. So first of all, check the remaining anatomy of the heart, sequential anatomy-wise, because the cardiogenic syndromes may be associated mainly with the total pulmonary venous return. You may have extracardiac abnormalities, and you see here that the neonatal percentage are always lower than the percentages in the fetus. And then you have Kaptai syndrome, which in our meta-analysis was associated in 2.38% of the cases, and half that number in the cases described after birth. Obstruction can be expected in roughly 1/3 of the cases. And as far as the outcome, as usual for the fetal series, the overall outcome is much worse than if you take into account only the live birth. The single factor contributing to a poor or relatively poor prognosis are obstruction of the confluent vein that you see here, which has been defined as a very high velocity after the obstruction, at the level of the obstruction. As you see here, continuous flow before, and downstream you have very high velocity. And also the association, as I told you, with other major abnormalities. This was a single ventricle with malposition of the great arteries, and this is another similar heart disease, all in the context of cardiogenic syndromes, and they may be associated also with pulmonary outflow tract obstruction. This is the condition I mentioned before, Kaptai syndrome. As you see, only on some cases I highlighted the things that you can detect before birth, and there is also a risk of moderate neurodevelopmental delay after birth, and this is another case we detected before birth. What you should look at is the periauricular tag, that if you can demonstrate on 2D or 3D may confirm a very high risk of association with this condition. The other, come on. Okay. The other thing that we are left with is the diagnosis of the partial form. This is almost unimportant because it's not an mental emergency. Most of these individuals do not even need an operation, but there is one form which is important because it may be associated with pulmonary hyperplasia, and that's the so-called scimitar syndrome. Edwin, tell me when I'm over with the time. 2 minutes?
2 minutes, yes.
Okay. So, in this case, the description is this one. You have a hypoplastic lung on the right side, and all the pulmonary veins from the right side are confluent into this vessel here, which takes the shape of a scimitar, which is the Arab sword, and this is why it takes on this name. And the hint is that on the four-chamber view, you actually see mesocardia, because the right lung is a bit smaller than the left lung. You may see only connection on the left side of the heart, coming to the posterior wall of the left atrium, which is confirmed by power Doppler or power Doppler with a reduced PRF. And then if you have the chance to run a 3D and 4D examination, it was B-flow, but you can take also glass body or whatever, you can demonstrate the abnormal, that's not the scimitar, but that is the abnormal vessel going below the diaphragm to reach the portal system in this condition. It's extremely rare. Or some other cases, you may have actually very abnormal cases. You see here that it seems on grayscale that one vein is connecting to this dilated right atrium, and indeed this was the case. Not only this one, these were the inferior ones, one connected to the left and the other one to the right, but in the clip, if it works, I'll show you that both the inferior and the superior, these are the inferior, the other ones are the superior, the two left going to the left and the two right going to the right. And in this case, on the top of that, that may be introduction to Raven speaking a bit after me, you have an abnormal drainage of the ductus venosus directly into the right atrium, and that's why this fetus had such a large right atrium. So that's why you have to assess very carefully the returns on the systemic side, but also especially on the pulmonary side. So in conclusion of this talk, pulmonary venous returns can be studied by 2D, 4D with stick, and with recent new transducer it becomes quite easy, much easier than before, to demonstrate at least two pulmonary veins also very fastly during your anomaly scan. The assessment of the sequential anatomy is of crucial importance. Also in the screening, you see our guidelines underlining that, and we are going to review them during the next year. And the important things to exclude or to confirm are cardiopulmonary syndromes and the total form or abdominal pulmonary venous return. Stick may help to a certain extent. There are some publications on that. The problem is that we do miss this anomaly. If you review the papers, only 2% of all the cases have been reported prenatally. So we should, that represents a challenge in our hands to increase our confidence in confirming that indeed the two pulmonary veins are entering the left atrium. And the take-home message, try to see these pulmonary veins and try to increase your knowledge about color and power Doppler. Remember that if you see hollow structures behind the left atrium, 99% of the cases is a bolus of fluid into the esophagus, and in the last 1% may be the vertical vein in an abnormal pulmonary venous return. And if you look at the three-vessel view and you say, because it kind of reflex, for those of you who have seen a few of them, oh, that's a persistent left superior vena cava, you don't check the direction of flow, go backwards, get the power Doppler or the color Doppler to confirm that if it's persistent left, it should going down. If it's abdominal venous return, it's going up. And thank you for your